All right, hey folks. So today I want to talk to you about diet and fat loss. And now, what I'm going to present to you here is relatively controversial. All right, but I'm only speaking from my personal experience, my experience with my clients, and also from the research. So it's all backed up. So if you guys want to discuss this in the comments, please do. I can back up everything I'm saying with either studies or my own personal experience. So it's worth having the discussion. It's just not a discussion which a lot of people have, and they actively push back against it. But I've used this approach many times with my clients to really good effect. So I want to bring it to you guys as an option for you. So firstly, thanks for making it onto my channel. If you have any questions or comments, pop them down below. It probably will be for this one. And if you'd like to work with me on your own strength and physique goals or inducing an approach like this, then by all means, contact me via the link in the description. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about very low calorie diets is what I'm talking about. Now, firstly, in my experience in helping people diet and also dieting myself, the biggest barrier towards where you are now relative to where you want to be physique wise, let's say you want to get shredded, let's say you want to get a six pack, you've built up some muscle mass over the years and you kind of want to shred down. The biggest barrier is hunger and cravings. That's the biggest barrier. I think most people would agree. Hunger and cravings is the biggest barrier towards getting them from where they are now to their goal physique. How to manage those in the long term. So that seems to be the number one factor. We get it. We all know now it's calories in versus calories out. You guys are intelligent. You're my audience. You're all very intelligent. You know about that. It's basically calories in versus calories out. We get it. All right. Whether you're doing keto, whether you're doing, whatever. Right? We know it's calories in versus calories out. We get it. But that doesn't mean we don't get hungry, right? So hunger tends to precede cravings. So you manage hunger, you have a greater chance of managing cravings. So not counting, crazy, ridiculous diets, most and you can just blame your local PT on those, but most people understand the idea is eat less calories than you currently need and you will lose weight, and maintaining weight long-term means finding a way of eating those low number of calories. Most people get that. So therefore, the goal of every diet should be to get you to the point where you no longer have to fight hunger on a daily basis. You shouldn't rely on blood and guts motivation every morning when you get out of bed, sniffing caffeine and watching Rocky to get you through the day. You shouldn't have to rely on that, because that motivation is ultimately very fleeting and it won't really get you anywhere, because let's say you get your goal, you'll probably rebound and yo-yo up and down over the years. So you can't just rely on motivation. You have to find a way of eating that allows you to control your hunger and your cravings. All right? We all with me so far? If you have any arguments with that, put it down below. So let's define very low calorie diets. Now, here's kind of the meat of what I'm talking about. So I'm talking about using a very low calorie diet or a low calorie diet as a means of making your diet easier. Okay, let's just lay down the gauntlet right now. I'm not talking about very low calorie diets for the purpose of just losing weight quickly. I'm talking about utilizing a specific technique, a very low calorie diet, for the purpose of making your diet easier. Because at a certain amount of calories, we see, and I see it with myself, I see it with my clients, and we see it in the research, at a certain break point of calories, which seems to be roughly 1,200 or less, we tend to get less appetite. And very low calorie diets are defined as 800 calorie diets. Low calorie diets are defined as 1,200 calorie diets. These types of diets tend to induce a greater feeling of fullness, greater feeling of satiety. At this point, I'm sure any number of you guys are going to be switching off, but hear me out, okay? Listen to the video. Let me lay down the evidence for you as well as my experience. So, yeah. So this was a study by Quad in '89. It is concluded that VLCD is an effective and encouraging way of starting a diet program, and that it should be continued for at least 2 months, as the length of the initial VLCD period related significantly to the amount of weight eventually lost. What this group of researchers found was that assuming we start a diet with a very low calorie amount. So we start off with a very low calorie amount. It leads to better outcomes in the long term. So people say things like, well, you can't crash diet, otherwise you're just going to rebound and gain all the weight back on. Where's the research on that? There is none. All the research on VLCD is dating back to the 80s is entirely positive. Like, I saw a post on Instagram this morning, actually, by some young girl who had boosted her own posts because she thought it was great, and she was talking about the destructive nature of low-calorie diets. I'm like, where's your research? Where's your research on that? We have solid, robust research. This is not like past 5 years of hypertrophy research kind of nonsense. This is 5 decades worth of research, which robustly tells us that VLCDs are a thing, and they reduce appetite, increase satiety over and over and over in laboratory settings. Like, this is not just some fly in the wall 45 sets a week study. Like, this is decades of research which show us. So if people are saying, well, yeah, VLCDs, LCDs are going to cause you to binge, where's your research? Because if you don't have any, it's just your opinion, and your opinion's crap. So here, this in this particular research, people from the 80s, and it's been established over and over again, it shows that the initial weight loss period via the VLCD resulted in a greater loss of body weight and body fat over the long term. It resulted in better long-term outcomes. Now, you might ask, why is that? So let me give you some of my experience. I regularly work with clients who are 70 to 80 pounds overweight, and I've got a number of people on the books now who have lost 70 or 80 pounds of fat. Just let that sink in. That is a life-changing amount of fat. Now, with almost all of them, I've started with a VLCD type of approach. It is such a drastic intervention that they lose a tremendous amount of weight, which is insanely good for their motivation. So let's say you've got a guy who's 80 pounds overweight, and he's tried this diet, whatever. And I set them up on a properly set up and properly executed VLCD. So something which is actually is nutritionally balanced. And that's important, by the way. So that helps. And I can set them up with something that's nutritionally balanced and is healthy, right? And they start to lose weight. And within a month, they've lost like 30 pounds. Wham, I've got them. They're like, they look at me and they think I'm a goddamn genius, right? Yeah. And they believe. That's the key thing. They believe. Because prior to that, they probably had years, in some cases, decades, where they've just gone up and down in body weight and they've lost it, or they've maybe lost like the same 5 or 10 pounds. And all of a sudden, they're with me a month in, they've lost 30 pounds. Like, holy wow. And they believe, and they can see a difference in the mirror. The pants stop fitting, all that kind of stuff. And they're doing it in a healthy approach. So they're maintaining their muscle mass because the diet is set up correctly. It's not a crash diet in the sense of just eat nothing, which is usually just like small bits of carbs here and there. It's a specific dietary intervention set up to make sure nutritional needs are taken care of and muscle is retained. There's a sense of belief there. Now, you guys might not be 80 pounds overweight, but you might be relatively overweight, 20, 30 pounds, whatever. To start off a diet as a VLCD means you tend to have better outcomes later down the line. Not something I'd recommend for somebody who's already shredded, but it does work very well, and that's why. Now, just to continue that line of thoughts. So, benefits and risks of an intensive, very low-calorie diet program for severe obesity. This is from a study by Anderson in '92. Weight losses using comprehensive VLCDs allow moderately to morbidly obese persons to achieve greater benefits than other non-surgical treatments and should be considered before opting for surgical treatment. So this is a problem that researchers have, because we do have an obesity problem. Okay, we have a problem with obesity, and it costs the taxpayer a lot of money. It costs people a lot of money in healthcare, wherever you are in the world. So researchers are looking for a way of reducing body fat without surgery, without expensive medications. This is a very good way of doing that. And we, as bodybuilders and fitness enthusiasts, can use this, right? And I've used it in the past, and my clients have used it to great effect. So next study is by Astrup in '89. Very low-calorie diets have many advantages as they are an inexpensive, safe, and easy to comply with and give rapid and encouraging weight loss. So all good so far. Now, here's a bit of my experience with VLCDs and why I think they work well. So if I get somebody who's, let's not say 80 pounds overweight, because that's not going to be most of you guys. Most of you guys, if you have got a few pounds to lose, let's say you're 30 pounds overweight, okay? You're just like moderately overweight. Let's say you weigh, I don't know, 210, 220, whatever, and you want to get down to 180 and you'll be like 25 BMI at that stage, so you'll be okay. So most of you guys will come in with a lifetime of habits which have led you to that point. Like, you might deny that. You might say, no, Faz, I eat great. Clearly you don't, right? No offense, right? But so if you are, if you're that weight, then clearly there's some work to be done, right? So most people who are that sort of weight have got 30, 40 pounds to lose. They come to me with a lifetime of habits which have led them to that point. Even if they've lost a ton of weight already, like, great if you have. Again, not, that's fantastic. But if you're at that point, there's still some work to be done. So sometimes they have decades of negative habits, potentially negative self-speak, like they just talk about themselves like they can't lose that final few pounds. They've just had cycles of failure where they've tried to get down to maybe 180, whatever, they've not managed it, and now they're whatever, There's just years and years of failures and successes. Sometimes to change all of that ingrained behavior, sometimes throwing it all out and starting fresh works better than making small changes. This is just my theory for why these VLCDs work so well. In my experience, forming new habits is a demonstration of this. Rip out the old, reinforce the new. Where people fail on this approach, where people fail when they're doing like these crash diets, is they try and be like nice to themselves. So they'll say, okay, well, I'm going to do this diet, but every Saturday night I'm going to get some pizza just to be nice to myself. Because I got to be nice. I got to live life, right? Hey, you got to live life. Hey, never mind you've been living life for the last 3 decades. Like, I got to live life, Never mind your doctor's like hammering on your door saying, look, you got to, this is some bad stuff going on here. I've got to live life. So they try and be nice to themselves. That is where the problem begins. Like, when you're dealing with, alcoholics, you don't say, I'm just going to have a little bit of alcohol on the weekend. Like, all that does is it reinforces the previous habit. What you're trying to do is think of it like as a battle of wills. You've got 3 decades worth of obesity and obesity related habits versus this new set of habits, which is leading you towards health, right? And shreds and everything that comes with shreds, the chicks, mostly the compliments from guys, but sometimes the chicks. And so if you are constantly reinforcing those old habits, which are like an absolute juggernaut in your mind, then your body will naturally move back towards the old habits. So again, you don't give an alcoholic like just a hint of alcohol for old time's sake. Like, there's no alcohol, right? So that's the first thing. That's where people fail. The second thing is they don't set up their environment right. So they just fall back on bad habits. So let's say, they don't have food ready in the fridge, or let's say they have a bunch of friends who love to go out and eat and all that kind of stuff. You've got to set up your life to make it as easy as possible. Again, you don't want to just be willpowering your way through. That doesn't work. So I've talked a little bit about VLCD benefits, like my experience with them, my clients' experience with them, the results that I've had, also why I think they work particularly well. Let's talk a bit about drawbacks, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows, okay? to use the quote that I'm famous for. Right. This is from the research, one of the drawbacks is constipation. That can be reduced if you've got a properly set up diet. Like, this says supplementation of 30 grams of dietary fiber. If you're doing a VLCD correctly, like if I'm setting it up for you, then you're going to have enough fiber. And muscle loss is also a potential drawback. If you have enough protein, that drawback is negated as well, especially if you are training with weights, as you should be doing. So all drawbacks that can be, dealt with. Next thing, cravings following a VLCD. So this was a study done by Martin in 2005. From baseline to week 12, craving decreases were greater for the VLCD group than for the LCD group on all measures. This is what I've been saying right at the beginning, guys. Like, there's a certain cutoff point. Like, I know, for example, just to hammer the point home, I'm less hungry at 1,000 calories than I am at 1,500 calories. I don't know how that works. I'll just say, I don't know how that works. I don't know how it works, but it's true. If I go down to 1,000 calories, I am less hungry there than I am at 1,500. I don't know how it works, but that's what happens. And this is what we see in the research as well. Time and time again, decades and decades worth of research show us this. Here's another one from Harvey in 93. There was no evidence to support the belief that restricting intake of certain foods leads to increased cravings for those foods, or that the magnitude of weight loss is related to food cravings. It's just not there. assuming people are on a VLCD or an LCD. I find my cravings are worse if I'm on like a moderate cut. Go right down, Band-Aid, rip it right off, and it's, as long as you set it up correctly, and that's what I do, as long as you set it up correctly, it works. So just to show you a bit of a chart here, this showed things like, this was like subjective ratings of hunger, fullness, desire to eat, and satisfaction or appetite. The CR is the regular diet, CR plus EX is diet and exercise, LCD is low calorie diet, okay, low calorie control. So if we have a look at some of these stats here, we see that, if I want to just point out fullness. Fullness is a really interesting one. There was a higher degree of fullness with the low calorie control, okay? And here, it's really interesting that with the desire to eat as well, we just get a greater level of dietary adherence and dietary control with further reductions in calories. So exercise helps as well, but the further down you go in calories, it results in not only better appetite control, but actually more fullness as well. We don't know how that works. Potentially it works due to the plasticity of the stomach. So stomach size goes down quickly, rapidly, because there's less volume of food. That causes you to get less hungry less often, be more full. I don't know. If you're constantly eating a lot, and then some periods of time you're going by not eating very much, perhaps that could be a thing. I don't know, but it's just worth bearing in mind. This is very, very well established in the research. Okay, some warnings for you guys, in bearing in mind my experience on this. Appetite can get so low to the point that it can be almost too easy to diet, and when that happens, you can start to develop like just really bad fatigue. That is something to really be warned about. And I know that almost sounds like I'm joking, but I'm not. Like, you can, your appetite can. I remember doing a VLCD a couple of years ago with a lot of fasting, and my appetite was about the same as my 3-year-old niece. Is, I could eat about that much food. It makes it very easy to diet, but fatigue hits you hard. So there's a reason why I do implement some free meals alongside that. And it's a case of monitoring the free meals and balancing it amongst how fast you need to lose weight. So there is a potential warning there. There shouldn't be any nutritional deficiencies if you set up the diet correctly. So again, if you're going to do a VLCD, work with a professional who can actually set that up correctly. So my closing thoughts. VLCDs are a very, very powerful ally in the journey of long-term weight maintenance. If abused, they can backfire, kill your appetite, massive fatigue. So respect the diet, respect what it can accomplish. When you're on a VLCD, go hard. When it's your time to refeed, enjoy it. Let your results and your gym performance guide that balance between going on a VLCD and then pulling back a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I've set so many people up with these types of diets, especially through lockdown, because most people weren't doing as much activity. And so it just became almost like a focus that, okay, you know what, we can't do a great deal of lifting weights. We can't really bulk, but we can do some lifting. We can do some resistance training at home. So let's cut. So cutting a lot of body fat, not losing any muscle. There were so many, if you look on my Instagram, around about sort of 2000, the year of 2000, there were so many examples of guys and women who were losing 30, 40, 50 pounds. It works. If you want to work with me to help you set that up in a safe way, I would encourage that, because you can set it up wrong and it can backfire. It's not good for your health. It's not good for your mentality. It's not good for your weight loss. But if you set it up correctly, let me show you how, then I can do that. And hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully it's opened your mind about something which not a lot of people consider and people have quite a lot of strong views on. But look, guys, the proof's in the pudding. So I will speak to you all next time. You take it easy.